it's connecting. So,
Mhm.
Setting up your meeting for a custom streaming service. So there you go. Now it's going live. We're live now. We're live on all the
Hi,
platforms.
world. Hello, everybody.
Hello, world. Okay,
Welcome.
cool. I'm gonna hit the.
Let's hit it.
Am I sharing the? I am sharing the thing. Okay, here we go. Hit it.
Yep.
Welcome to Earl and the Idiot, the show that gives you the answers you need to take your business to the next level. With Earl Flormata, one of Vancouver's most sought-after business and marketing consultants, author of Business Engine Optimization, consultant to over 60 successful businesses, an all-around evil marketing genius with a combined total of more than $70 million worth of sales to his credit. And some idiot. Okay, here we go.
Here we go. I
I
was
love
just talking
the
to Jason
pause.
last night.
Love the pause.
What's that?
I just love that pause. And some idiot.
Yeah. And some idiot. Yeah. No, he's good, that guy. I just talked to him last night, actually. You know, he was on Firefly Lane. You know that movie?
Yeah,
Or not movie, TV show. Yeah, he was in that.
that's awesome.
I can't say. Have you seen it? Or are you just familiar with it?
Small. I'm familiar with it. I haven't seen it, but I have this giant list of stuff I should be watching on Netflix, but then I end up falling asleep and then I pass out. So
Yeah.
it is on the to watch list.
Yeah, I have a giant list as well, and I just end up watching Bob's Burgers all the time.
There you go.
I was wearing this. I just realized I got the shirt on. I was wearing this Rebel Alliance. It's like a propaganda poster for the Rebel Alliance. Join the Rebel
Nice.
Alliance.
Yeah.
And this guy in a store at the mall today, I was like, "Oh, great shirt, man." I was like, "Oh, thanks." He's like, "Have you read that one book where the blah blah blah?" And he starts talking about the books, and I'm like, I haven't read the books at all. I'm just a movie guy. Give me a break.
There you go. All right. Well, we're gonna talk about the picture behind your head for the audience.
Yeah.
who's
Okay.
just listening in.
So we're talking about having a coach, the world of having a business coach, and this is the image maybe a lot of people get. Maybe this is the image a lot of people should have. Here's the coach. This guy here is coaching this guy here on.
There you
in
go.
this case,
Yes,
being a
drill
good
sergeant.
soldier.
Yes, drill sergeant. So it's a picture of two military dudes. One of them is clearly the sarge, and one of them is the private, and the sarge is very up in his face. So
Yeah. Interesting phenomenon. I watched this with this acting group I was in one time, and we watched this scene and analyzed it. And the reaction in the room, it was a mix of men and women. And the reaction in the room, the guy said, every time I was showing this to a group of people, the reaction was all the same. The women are horrified by the way the sergeant is yelling at the recruits, and the men are always laughing their asses off.
it's funny because it's not me.
It's funny because it's not me. Yeah, exactly. But it's also like, it's a recognition that the reason he's being mean to these guys, he's not being mean to them because he's cruel and vindictive or whatever. He's being mean to them because he's preparing them to go to war, right? You want your boot camp to be so horrible that when you get out to actual war, it's a walk in the park.
Yep. There you
And
go.
and somehow that all ties back to coaching. I mean, I guess, a coach here, we'll tie it back now. A coach wants to ask the tough questions, right? Coach doesn't want to make you, coach isn't there to validate you and say everything's going great with your business. He's there to ask you the tough questions that uncover the real issues. And sometimes that can maybe feel like that a little bit. Sometimes it can be uncomfortable, right?
So here's a tough question. I missed you on the boat, bro. What happened?
Oh, yeah. No, I wasn't able to make that one. I mean, for one thing, it was so hot last time. Oh my God.
It was hot. These two poor bastards showed up in full suits. I'm like, you gonna die, right?
Yeah, that was a bad idea.
I had dress shorts and like a polo, and I'm like, this is great. Like,
Yeah.
the wind blows a little bit. Ooh, this is wonderful. And those poor guys in the suits, man, they were sweating. I'm like, you need some water. So
it's definitely a dress shorts and polo situation out there. Even last time, and I think this time was worse, right?
Oh yeah, it was the hottest day of the year so far. So that was from like a like a venue. It was fantastic because the wind was blowing. It was just beautiful. So it's like, oh, good.
Yeah.
So if the wind wasn't blowing, I would be a melted mass of nothing on the deck by now. So
Yeah. The real problem is you go outside to get some air from the inside, the sauna on the inside, but there's no shade on a boat, depending on which way the sun is.
Yeah.
And you're just roasting out there. And yeah.
So I found the secret where you hide in the shade of the other boat that blocks off some stuff, and then
Oh, you have
hide
to
in
hire a cruise ship to park on one side of you.
it. There you go. There you go. And then you
All right.
you were commenting on my Facebook feed about another event that I went to. I think 230 people showed up. That was fun.
Yeah, I can't help but notice I didn't get my invite, Earl.
It wasn't my event.
Oh,
my
Yeah,
buddy Matt ran it, and he invited me to run security of all things. So he's like, "Hey, Earl, can you run security for me?" I'm like, "Look at a free ticket." He's like, "Yeah, you want some pizza? All right."
security. Do you need security at an event full of nerds?
Well, he wanted to make sure people got their wristband, no one snuck in, and and the hilarious part, it was actually more logistics than security. So the concept, which was a little new to me, was he armed everybody with 3 foam balls, and there were 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 speakers, and whichever speaker you thought was the best, if they impressed you, basically like an America's Got Talent style, you threw the ball at the speaker, and whichever speaker got the most balls thrown at them won. And so here's the thing: I didn't know what the prize was. I'm like, wait, the best speaker got a katana, and I'm like, dude, I would have spoken if I knew. Like, are you kidding me? I would have thrown my heart on the floor and just gave it my all. If I knew that the prize was the sword, I get it. I'm 43. I'll kill your ass for a sword. So, so yeah, man, I would have played too. But anyway, so it was pretty funny. If you hit the speaker in the head, you've got more points, and you got to spin a wheel to get a prize. So everybody was just chucking stuff all over. It was great, and it was props to the speakers. There were 6 solid speakers, and they all gave really good advice. And this is like, wow, right? So it wasn't your typical, crappy pitch fest where they're just selling stuff and no one's teaching anything good. They taught good stuff on stage, so that was awesome.
So it was actual informative stuff, not just them pitching their wares or whatever.
Exactly. So totally good event. Yeah, I guess.
What was it called?
Both one. Internet Masterminds.
Oh,
that's the fan.
When's it? Is it happening again? I would love to come there. I'm obviously a mastermind, and I deserve to be there.
Absolutely. He's running his own mixer type boat type event. I don't know if he's going to be on a boat or not, but he wants to run a similar event to the one that we run. So yeah, we'll see. I'll put you in touch with him and just follow him on Eventbrite or whatever. You can hang out with him there.
Perfect. Awesome. So tying it into our quest, our topic today, did you get asked any good questions? Did you ask any good questions? Did you
Yeah, so I ended up running into all the speakers and just showing them a quick pitch, because they only had like 15 minutes each, right? And like, can I do all this in 15? I'm like, here, watch this. I pitched them 3 things, 5 minutes each, and they're like, oh my god, it's amazing in 5 minutes. I'm like, oh yeah, 15 minutes is a long ass time. Here, watch this. And so when you give them like a framework around the structure, then you ask them questions and you engage the audience. All of a sudden, the audience is completely bought into what you have to say. Right. And you can totally do this from because it was a small stage, only about 200 people showed up. Right. So you can still interact with people at that size. Like once you get to, I want to say like 1,000 people, you can't really pull the audience as well as you used to. Right. Like unless you're like, Tony Robbins level speaker. But like your average speaker, 100, 200 people, yeah, no problem. You can still interact with the audience. You can still make it fun. You can still make it really specific. Right. And kind of go from there. So there you go.
You got up and pitched at this thing? Is that what you're saying?
No, I was just chatting. I was just yakking with the speakers before the event started, right? So some of them looked nervous. And like, easy, here, watch this. And I just pitched 3 things, and they're like, you pitched it? Why don't you speak? I'm like, I was too late, right? And then
because I'm security.
Well, who's going to do security? And then so anyways, so then I found out that the sword was the prize. I'm like, damn it, right?
Should have spoken.
Too late now. So
all right.
You go. So Matt, out of this event, if you give a sword as a prize, freaking tell me. So.
Obviously, Earl's going to want the sword.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was there second and third place? Like a ninja star was the second prize, and then like a
no, it was just.
What do you call that little? Just a little throwing. It's not a knife, but it's just like a little
kunai.
Spike.
Oh yeah, there's kunai and there's ninja spikes. I have both. Some of them are in my room here somewhere. But yeah, okay. Kunai is this thing. This looking knife.
Oh yeah. But I've seen the ones that like it just looks like a steel pencil, like it doesn't even have
Oh
a
yeah, I have
spearhead
those
on it all.
too. Those are just called ninja spikes. Just spikes. There you go.
No, there's no cool Japanese name for that.
I'm sure there is a cool Japanese name for it, but I never learned it. So
All right, we can look it up. But so you were prompted, you were encouraged by this to do this kind of. It's almost like it's a inception level, multi-level kind of questionception. You're asking questions about what questions to ask about questions for questioning people.
yeah.
But was there one particular thing at these events you went to that inspired you to do this, or just a kind of general impression you came out of?
Every Wednesday we run a coach the coaches kind of thing, and all the coaches that I work with come hang out and just ask me anything. And people started asking questions, and what we started doing was we started asking deeper, more probing, more specific questions that were able to help them find what the actual root of the real problem was. The same thing happened at the speaker event where people started asking stuff, and they're like, well, is that really the problem, or is this the problem? And they're like, oh my God. And then, is that really the problem, or is this the problem? And then one of the secret sauces to being able to grow your business is sales. And one of the secret sauces to sales is if you can explain your problem to your prospect better than they can explain their problem to you, game over. Right? And then they felt heard, they felt listened to, they feel like you are the answer to their problems. And as long as your product, service, offering, whatever it is, actually does solve that problem, scratch that itch, it's your duty as the salesperson. So I used to think sales was slimy and gross, and it's the guy trying to sell you a bad car and da 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 da. But then as I kind of grew, it's like, no. Sales is facilitating the buying process, right? Helping somebody find a solution for a problem they're currently facing is actual sales, right? And so until they can define what the actual problem is, right, they're going to buy dumb stuff that doesn't actually help them do what they're supposed to do. So there you go.
Yeah, I'm running into that right now with one of my clients who hired me because he wants leads. Right? He's like, I need leads. Give me leads. I got this company that's sending me leads, and they're not doing a good job, and I want you to get me leads. And so I spent 3 months, dialing in his Google ads. Started designing a new website for him, and coaching him on some social media stuff. Blah blah blah. Now the leads are flowing in, and I was like, great. And I was like, and then I sort of went, what's happening to all these leads anyway?
Yeah.
And oh my Lord, did some nonsense fall out of that question. There's a more probing question. What happens to the leads you get? And
that's one of the things I ask. People go, Earl, I need more leads. Okay, show me what you do with the current leads. How many times do you touch them? Right? 6, 7, 12, a dozen. Like if you're not hitting them this many times, you're just wasting them. Right? I'm like, oh yeah, we call them once, and if they don't show up, we just abandon the ship and wait for the next batch of leads. I'm like, oh my gosh. Right? Don't do that.
I'm not going to name names or anything, but I went through this guy. One of these salespeople that was not pulling his freight around the shop was saying, "Oh well, all these leads from the UK are no good. Like this is an international thing, and all these leads from the UK are no good. They're blah blah blah." And I was like, "Okay, well, there were 134 leads that you got last month. A bunch of them were from the US." And he kind of came up with some excuse, whatever, blah blah blah. And so I went down, I went through that list of 134 leads, and I checked in with just the American ones. For that, and then these were leads that came in that month. 100% of them had been moved into the junk lead folder. Thrown on the trash heap, usually after one email and one attempt to phone call and leave a voicemail.
So that's just lead sales follow-up blasphemy,
right?
Yeah.
Every single one of the leads have been thrown in the junk pile, and he just goes, "Oh, the leads are no good." Anyway, that's a whole different show to talk about. But the point is, I asked the question of like, okay, well, great, these leads are all flowing in now. Now, what are you doing to these leads? Because I'd be like, great, you must be getting lots of sales now. Oh, no sales yet. And I'm like, what's happening?
Yeah.
What?
So the question within the question it's a questionception, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you asked ChatGPT, you told it, acting as a coach, what kind of questions do you ask clients to further delve into their problems so you can address the root of the problem versus the symptom of the problem? What are 3 to 5 questions you can ask to further clarify and ascertain if it's a real problem or an imagined one, which is interesting? And how can you guide them to the actual problem solution pair? I
Well,
was like,
this talks to the thing that you were just saying, right? Like, I want more leads. Is that really the problem?
yeah.
Or are you not following up with the leads, right? It's like, yeah.
I remember I had a realization once. One time I was working with in a kind of drug rehab situation.
Mhm.
And the thing I realized, and it's funny because I'm reminded of this because I just read it somewhere else. Someone saying the same thing I realized like 15 years ago. People always talk, oh, I have a drug problem. I have a drug problem. I have a drug problem. No, you don't. You have a drug solution.
Ah, nice. Well played.
Right? The drugs are a solution to some other problem, physical pain, emotional pain.
Right.
The drugs were a solution. And that's why you can't get the guys to give it up, because they're still trying to solve that problem. And this is exactly like this. You're not getting to that root problem.
There's a really good book that we've been reading, and it takes a year to read this book if you read it properly.
Okay.
Called The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. And when you read it, part of the training is you have to, there's a book, it talks about these scrolls, and you have to read the scroll part of the book. And when you read the scroll, you have to read this thing 3 times a day for 30 days in a row per scroll, right? So there's like, I think 10 of scrolls. So it'll take you 300 days to read this book if you do it properly. And so you read the thing over and over again. And in the first scroll, one of the things is a habit can only be supplanted by another habit, right? So if he has a problem, right, and the drug is the solution, right, you can only remove it by replacing it. So again, in smoking terms, like you can't just quit smoking, you have to start chewing gum or something else that replaces the old habit. And we are a slave to our habits, right? That's just how humans function. We're a slave to our habits. So if you build a good habit and you're a slave to a good habit, at least it's a good habit, right? So there you go.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into this. So I'm not even totally sure how this is going to work for the show, but I'm sure you've thought this through very carefully before you told ChatGPT to give us these in 5 minutes before we started. All right, so here's what ChatGPT says.
Meticulously. So
yeah, of course. Here's what ChatGPT had to say. Oh, let me just interrupt and digress for another second. I do like to digress. I've just learned that in French, ChatGPT sounds exactly the same as chat répété, which means cat, I farted.
Hashtag wisdom.
Hashtag wisdom. So apparently when you watch TV in French, it's all, will cat I farted steal our jobs?
So now I have to register the domain catifarted.com. And
you probably should.
There you go.
Well, I'll race you after the show's over. All right. So ChatGPT had to say, as a coach, it's essential to ask thoughtful questions to help clients explore their challenges deeply and uncover the root of the problem. Here are 3 to 5. Here are 3 to 5. It's given a definite number, but here's a range of questions. Here are 3 to 5 questions you can ask to clarify and ascertain if it's a real problem and guide them towards the actual problem solution pair. Number 1, can you tell me more about the specific situation or issue you are facing? This question allows the client to provide more context and details about the problem they perceive, listen actively, and encourage them to expand on their thoughts and emotions related to the situation. Earl, please expand on your thoughts and emotions related to the situation.
This has always driven me absolutely bonkers crazy. So I've had mentors, right? And the mentors, like a good mentor, a good teacher, doesn't tell you what to see, but they tell you where to look, right? Again, I'll repeat that. A good mentor, a good teacher doesn't tell you what to see, they tell you where to look. And then they kind of goad you towards where to look if you can't find it. And then if you're just exasperated, they kind of just grab your head and go, no, look this way. And then you see it, you're like, oh, well, then you get it. So can you tell me more about the specific situation or issue you're facing? It would drive me crazy because my mentors would always go, oh, I see. Tell me more. Right? Oh, I see. Expand on that. Okay? Can you go deeper on this part here? And the hilarious thing is I thought they were trying to get more information out of me. They weren't.
Right? They were, they were trying to get you to look at them.
I'll tell you more. I'll tell you more. I'll tell you more.
Mhm.
And they're actually guiding my thoughts to the point where it's like, you keep asking about this thing, but I keep telling you the same thing. But the right, and it's just like,
Mhm.
and then all of a sudden the light bulb kicks in, but it hits me in the face, and it's just like, oh my gosh, that's not what the problem is. The problem is actually, and then that's what this. Can you tell me more about this, right? And
Mhm.
so that's one way we do this. The other way we've done this before. So a business owner just asking themselves, right? It's like we ran the Tuesday event that we normally run every week, and it was the so what test. And I don't know if we brought this up in the podcast before, but the so what test is pitch me
Oh,
what you
yeah.
got. And then I say the magic words, so what? And then you keep pitching. And then what happens is that after 7 or 8 so what's deep, all of a sudden you're like, it's actually this. And you simplified it so deeply and so simply, right? If you
Mhm.
I know this gets attributed to Einstein all the time, but if you can't explain it simply, then you can't explain it. I can't remember who actually said it, but
Vonnegut is where I heard it, but he might have been quoting somebody
yeah.
else.
So, but like just being able to cut it down to that specific piece. And so, can you tell me more, right? If you cut down to so what? If you cut down to okay, delve into a specific piece, what happens is that you kind of shift their perspective and you end up helping them see what they couldn't see before. And the thing is that you do need someone else. Like it's tough to do this by yourself and kind of self-assess and being able to do these things because typically if you're in the thick of things, you're using more judgment versus evaluation, right?
Mhm.
And the
Yeah.
judgment call just sits between your ears, right? And it's just completely
Mhm.
colored and biased as to what's going on in your life, what's going on in your situation, right? But you're the one under fire, right? But you answer very differently when you're not being shot at, right? So there you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. When you're not facing this guy, when you have a
Yeah,
more when you know you can answer honestly without being judged, it's
exactly. Right.
it's
So if
nicer.
you're going
And
through inspection and you're being yelled at, you're going to answer whatever you think they need you. They want to hear, right?
mhm.
Not the actual answer.
Yeah. It's funny. I operate this way, and often, like, I do understand this concept, but often, like, if I'm dealing with a business or whatever, I'm asking these questions just because I want to understand. You know
It's
what I mean?
both.
And
You do ask the question to understand, but then when it comes painfully obvious to you, the consultant, the coach, the expert, usually the business owner is still in the dark or they're still not understanding what the problem is. Because again,
mm,
they can't see the problem because they're too busy. They can't see the forest for the trees. It's just like, man, so it's asking the question from different angles, coming at it from different points of attack, from different angles of attack,
mm,
right? A different
but
vector, and just showing them from a different side. They're like, oh, and then the light bulb
yeah,
happens,
well,
right?
yeah, nothing like getting hit in the face with a light bulb, right? Um, but yeah, no, it's interesting when I go in that process where I'm just trying to, like, okay, I'm trying to build you a website or I'm trying to develop a marketing plan for you. So what is it you sell exactly? Wait, so why do you like? And I'm just okay, but why do people buy that then? Or ask some question like that,
Well, it's kind
and
of like
having the
that.
cut.
It's kind of like that poor
Yeah.
bastard you were talking to, who you took you like 3 meetings to figure out what the hell you actually did,
Mm.
right? So it's like, oh my god, right?
Yeah, and then the number of times I've had my client or whatever go, oh, that's a good point, actually. But if you rewind the conversation, I never made a point.
Yeah,
I just said, I
absolutely.
was just trying to understand, wait, so you sell this, but why would people buy that? And they go, oh, that's a good point, actually. You know what? The truth. And they think I've told them something brilliant when really I just asked them the question and they came up with the answer themselves all of a sudden.
There you go.
All right. So the next question here, how does this problem affect your life? Understanding the impact of the problem on the client's life helps identify the significance and realness. This is kind of a realness thing, I guess, of the issue. Explore how it makes them feel, what consequences it has, and how it influences their daily activities or relationships.
Most people worry about stuff that's never going to happen,
Hmm.
right? Most people worry about things that don't even exist, right? And
Mhm.
it's that it goes back to that serenity prayer, right? Lord, give me the courage to change things I can, the patience to accept things I can't, and the wisdom to know the difference,
Yeah.
right? So how does this problem affect you? And then you ask that question, and sometimes they're like, it doesn't yet. And
Hmm.
that yet is very just yet, right?
Right.
And it's like, but is it really? Like, what are the chances of this going to happen, right? And people are
Mhm.
prepping for stuff that may or may not happen, right? People are, or they're over prepping. There's no such thing as, I mean, if you do a little bit of prep, it's not going to hurt you. But if you over prep and you do so much for something that has so little chances of actually happening, right? You're wasting your life, you're wasting your time, your business isn't growing because you're focusing on things that don't exist, right? So going back to how does this problem affect you or your life? Does it affect your employees? Does it affect your business? If so, how? What specifically does it do to your business? What's the worst thing that can happen? So asking them, what's the worst thing that can happen? Like, what's the maximum damage this thing can inflict? What's the minimum damage this can inflict? What's the likelihood of this actually happening and causing some damage? And if it does have some damage, how much on a scale of 1 to 10 do you think that damage is actually going to be? And then now they're being realistic. And this is, like, are the problems real or imagined? And you'll be shocked as to how many are just imagined.
Yeah. Over prepping is not a problem we suffer from here at Earl and the Idiot.
Seeing as we typed this prompt literally 5 minutes before hitting record. Yeah. So there you go.
It seems to be working out okay. But then you also uncover, how is this affecting, someone might be like, oh yeah, your business is taking all my time, blah, blah, blah. You might say, how's that affecting your life? They might go, oh, well, my marriage is falling apart. And then suddenly go, oh, wait, maybe I should do something about this.
Well, here's a good one, right? So I won't name names. This is a good thing.
Oh, come on.
I don't want to out him because, this is his story to tell, right?
Yeah.
So one of our coaches, one of our consultants, someone from part of our group said that, so this guy is phenomenal at building structure. So he's really good at building structure. Okay. And I asked him, of all the things I'm teaching you, how come structure? How come these pieces of the puzzle, this is what you're focusing on? And he told us we had a heart to heart with like all 7 of us on the call. Like this has happened around noon, so lunchtime. So I'm sitting there eating soup, he's pouring his heart out. And he told us that his dad was successful, but it came at the cost of not having a relationship because he was always busy. And he never got to really hang out or talk to his dad because his dad's always working, and his dad's always working because he didn't have the structure in place so he could step away. So this guy's specialty is business structure. Why? So that you can spend more time with your kid. You can spend more time with your spouse. You can spend more time with your family, right? And have, some sort of semblance of work-life balance, right? And this is, he's so structured on this one piece, right? And it was just interesting to see, what was the cause and effect, and like, okay, what happened, right? And so, that's just fascinating to me. How does this problem affect you or your life? Why is structure so important? So no other child gets left behind. That's a powerful emotion. Like, why do you do this? So this doesn't happen to anybody else. Oh, wow. Holy cow. Right. That's a big lift. And how does this problem affect your life? It didn't. It did affect his life. He fixed it. Right. And now he wants to fix it for other people so they don't suffer the same fate. That's a beautiful reason for being in business.
Right.
So, and that's part of what spurred this question from ChatGPT 5 minutes before we got on here. I'm like, oh, this happened like 8 times before, but in between the time I talked to you last and now. So it's like, I think the universe is telling me we need to talk about this. So.
Oh, okay, good. So then next question here is, have you encountered similar situations in the past? If yes, how did you handle them and what was the outcome? This question helps identify patterns and recurring themes, i.e. sort of ingrained failings of the person, I guess. That might be a bit too harsh. It allows the client to reflect on their previous experiences and strategies they employed to address similar challenges and give insights. It can give insights into whether this problem is a new one or part of a larger pattern.
So, okay, I'm going to go back to Og Mandino again, this greatest salesman in the world. It's got lots of really good quotes in the first scroll, and I'm on the first scroll. This is day, I think, 17 or 18. I read this damn thing.
I want to write a book, and I want to issue it in scroll form.
I want to make these scrolls and actually have scrolls. I'm running around with my Kindle and my iPad. It's not as cool. I think if I had a scroll and a katana, it'd be dope. Anyway, so
you're sitting on the SkyTrain. Scroll down. Let's see here. Just like looking over this scroll. It's all frayed, like put like brown on the edges. And
no, I want this thing in leather. I want this. Yeah, I want this. I want this heavy. So if someone were to accost me on the SkyTrain, I can beat them to death with my scroll. Anyway, perfect. So have you encountered similar situations in the past? And like this thing of saying it's identifying patterns, right? So because when you start to do this, the human mind is a pattern recognition engine, right? And the problem is that most of the time you won't recognize your own patterns until someone points it out to you. It's like, oh yeah, this has happened before, or this always happens to me, right? And when they bitch about this always happens to me, the common denominator is that me part, right? So, what are you doing? What are you putting out there into the universe such that your hires are so terrible? Why is everybody, like, what are you putting out there so that, people are stealing from you? Or what are you putting out there so that people are defecting to your competitors, right? What are you putting out there such that this is happening? And so this pattern recognition engine, again, goes back to the mentor teaching you not what to think, but how to think, right? And going back to the book that I was going to quote from, the question is again is have you encountered similar situations in the past? How did you handle them, and what was the outcome? And the funny thing is, inside the teachings, right, it talks about basic principles, and principles are what stick around. Tactics, strategies, it might work. It might work today, but give it a week, give it 2 weeks, give it 10 weeks, it'll be saturated. You can't use this technique anymore. It doesn't work anymore, right? So what used to work today, what used to work yesterday won't work tomorrow, right? And so, have you encountered this in the past? There's pattern recognition for some of these pieces, and you're looking at the principles, right? And it's basic principles are the things that stand the test of time, right? There's always a fancy dancy. Everyone always like, hey, Earl, what's the fancy dancy way to do this? You have to look at what the basic premise of it is, what the basic principle of it, follow the basic principle, and then just apply it to today's day and age, right? So, making an offer sound good, what's in it for them? What are the bad things that could potentially happen? How do we alleviate those bad things? How do we minimize the bad things that could potentially happen and maximize the good things that could potentially happen? You're actually better off looking at what is a modality by which to avoid failure versus to achieve success. And the reason behind that is, and again, this is from the book, grab 1,000 wise people, right? Wise men, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. Have 2 of them agree on what is the definition of success. And everybody will have different this, different that, different goal, different life. I want more money. I want more love. I want more family. I want more of this. I want more of that. I would like a Porsche. I want a yacht. And so these are all different things that people define as success, right? I just want to be able to eat, right? I don't want to live on a bridge. So success is different from everybody, but failure is always the same. Failure is defined as, one's inability to reach your goal, right? So if you're looking for avoiding failure, it's a better principle structure wise than what is your definition of success? Because now you have to sit there and define success, figure that out as it changes every bloody 6 months. It's a moving target, whereas avoiding failure is like, do this, then do this, you'll not step on the landmine, right? And if you don't step on the landmine, you get to keep your legs, which is probably a good thing, which makes you run faster. So there you go. So have you encountered this problem before? What happened? Do you know other people who've encountered this problem before? What did they do? And then they go, oh yeah, my neighbor had this same exact, and he did this. They know the solution, but because you just shifted it to a different time slot, they're like, oh yeah, it makes absolute sense now. So there you go.
I knew this one guy used to use the approach. If someone came to him with a problem, he was one of the best public speakers I've ever seen. He says, person comes to him with a problem and says, oh, I can't this and I blah blah blah, blah and I have all this problem, and he'll say to the guy, okay, I understand, I can do something for you here. But first, I need your help. And the guy goes, oh, yeah, what do you need? Like it snaps right out of it, right? And he goes, I have this friend who blah, blah, blah. And he just says the exact same problem the guy just said. And says, what should I tell him to do? And the guy goes, oh, well, just tell him to blah, 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 blah. I like solve the whole thing that he was crying about 2 seconds ago. And he's got the solution. You just shift the guy's mindset on it,
That's brilliant. That's hilarious, actually. That's
but then usually they'll turn around and be like, okay, well, that's what you should do. And the guy will be like, oh no, but you don't understand. And they'll go right back into it,
the mental gymnastics required for that is crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's charge ahead here. What next question, number 4 of 3 to 5 questions. What evidence or observations make you believe that this is a real problem? This kind of feels like one of those slightly covert questions of, are you sure it's really happening? Is
Yeah.
it really happening? Like, but so what evidence have you observed? Encourage the client to present concrete evidence or observable behaviors that support their perception of the problem. This question helps distinguish between objective facts and subjective interpretations. Dun dun dun.
One of the best things that Blair, my mentor, back in the day, taught me was judgment versus evaluation. Judgment versus evaluation. Evaluation means that, hey, Dan, I see this. Do you also see this? Right? So I'm asking external verifiable pieces, so collecting evidence. This is what I see. Do you see the same thing? Right? Versus a judgment call where I could care less about what you say. This is what's going on in my head. Therefore, judgment call, da 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 da. And I'm not saying that judgment is bad and evaluation is good. I'm saying evaluation is just more practical, right? Judgment, you cannot live without some judgment because you'll never have the data to make every single call every single time just based on the numbers and data. You just won't, right? So sometimes you have to use judgment to fill in the gap, right? But evaluation, right, in terms of like efficacy, right? If it's efficient versus inefficient, evaluation is so much better because if you can get everybody else on your side and then go, hey, do you see the same thing I see, right? So I'll give you a funny ass story for this one. So we used to house, and I'm using the story because I'm actually sitting in the room where this happened. So we used to house the international students, right? And my wife swore up and down that one of our students is escaping the house through the basement window. And I'm like, that's really hard. There's no way. I mean, the basement window isn't that big. Like, how the hell is he going to get out of there? And she's like, I swear, he's not home. He doesn't eat. He doesn't do anything, right? I've never seen him come in and come out. He just lives in his room all day, and no one can live in the room that long. And so one day we're across the street, and we literally see the basement window open. Shoes get popped out the basement window, right? And we see him slowly trying to creep out, but we're across the street looking at him, and we're just sitting there smiling, right? He sees us. And then he pretends to be airing out his room and fluffing stuff open, starts shaking the blankets, and then he grabs his shoes and slowly brings them back inside. And so
was he prisoner? I don't understand. Was he a prisoner in your house? Why did he have to sneak out? Can he just walk out the front door?
Yeah, he has keys. These are like teenagers, like they're like they're almost finished high school or they're already in college. You can go out whenever you want, right? So like you can come and go as you please, right? He just so they're not supposed to sleep over anywhere, and this kid was sleeping over other people's houses. You're not supposed to do that as per the contract and that because we're his guardians while he's in Canada, so he's not supposed to go over there. So and so he would sneak out. And then, this is the first time he did this in broad daylight. Really smart kid, apparently. So, what evidence or observations make you believe that this is a real problem? And we're like, it can't be. No one's this crazy. And then turns out, either it was or it wasn't. And so it's just, again, judgment versus evaluation. So the evaluation was, why don't we just watch the window and see what happens? Lo and behold, little bastard's trying to sneak out. And the funny thing is I'm in the basement room right now where this happened. So that's when this thing came up, it just this flood of emotion hit me in the face. I'm like, hey, remember that guy who used to sneak out the back? Yeah, exactly. So I thought my wife was crazy. I'm like, there's no way, right? Again, judgment versus evaluation. That was a judgment call on my side going, there's no fucking way. He's not doing this. Turns out she was right. So there you go.
Yeah.
On record, my wife was right. There you go.
There you go. Just gonna get that on a loop.
Yeah.
I think like you say, judgment can be useful sometimes. You hear a lot of stories about people who achieved amazing things had judgment to be like, nope, it's this way, and everyone's like, no, it's obviously not that way, and everyone throwing information at them to point out, oh, you can't possibly do it. Like Steve Jobs saying, well, it needs to boot up in 30 seconds, and they're like, no, you can't have it boot up in 30 seconds. So he had the judgment to know to overcome the apparency to everyone else. But then the flip side is where you supplant that judgment for observation and kind of defend yourself. But no, it's this way. Sorry, even though evidence to the contrary is all around you.
You can't just sit in your garden and say there are no weeds, there are no weeds, there are no weeds, and just weeds, right? So
you could, but you could change your judgment and say, actually, the weeds are kind of nice.
sure, but then that, the judgment then depends on whether or not you're crazy, right? So it's just like, all right,
Right.
poison ivy is
You know,
great. Pitch it all.
the definition of a weed is just a plant in the wrong place.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. There you go. All right.
All
Last
right,
question.
moving. Last question. We're getting wrapped up here. I like this one. This is a great one for sales. Imagine the problem has disappeared or been resolved. What would be different in your life? This question helps the client envision a positive outcome. It encourages them to focus on potential solutions and shifts their perspective from the problem itself to the desired outcome. By exploring the contrast, they may discover underlying needs or values that were not initially apparent. Like I say, I use this in sales. If someone's like, well, I don't know, I like it, but I prefer if it was orange. You say, okay, well, if we can get it in orange, or we got a sale here, right?
Absolutely.
And then the guy either says, yep, you got an orange, bam, we are done. Or he goes, well, actually, no, I still think it's too expensive. Like, okay, great. So now we got the real issue here, right?
Right. It's actually priced, right? There you go. That makes sense. So going back to imagine the problems disappeared. This is one of those wonderful things. It's like there's a bunch of other subsequent questions that kind of fit along with this structure, right? So I like if you had a magic wand, right? You had a magic button, you press that button, it does this. What's this? And they go, oh,
Yeah.
right? And I go, yeah, well, it would do this, and it would do this, and it would do this, and it would do this. Cool. Let's break that down. Let's unpack that. And let's talk about what you just said. You want this, you want this, you want this. So to do this, we have to do that. To do this, we have to do that. We do this, we have to do that. Are you prepared to do these three things? You're like, well, that's not as bad. Now that you broke it down and put it that way, this sounds really easy. Why are we talking? Let's go. Right.
Yeah. You ever hear that that it was a meme going around about this it was a kid, it was someone's kid or whatever, and she's like, I want to be an astronaut.
Mhm.
And the parents are like, well, if you want to be an astronaut, you have to graduate school and get good grades, and you have to study this or blah blah. And the kid goes, that's just three things.
Yeah, there you go.
So yeah,
You break it down,
yeah,
and they're passionate enough about it, and it lights them up.
yeah. I like this too, because it also shifts. Yeah, like problem. Be like, okay, well, what if we resolve this problem? Oh, like it's just a shift of attention can have a huge impact.
There's a framework that Blair uses to help sell things. He taught this to me because I was doing this unconsciously. I didn't realize that I was doing this, and then when he made me conscious and know about it, it just changed my life in terms of sales ability and everything else.
Yeah.
And the framework is fear, dream, quantify, close. Fear, dream, quantify, close, which is the pattern of how to sell something that doesn't physically exist, how to sell an idea. And the first phase is fear, where you're addressing their fears, right? So they're, does this guy actually know what he's doing? Is it a good idea? You're just addressing the fears, because if you don't address the elephant in the room, it's still going to be there. Now they're not listening to you, right? They're like, he never said any of these things. He doesn't know what he's doing. Then the dream chunk, and this is where this part is. Imagine the problem disappeared or has been resolved. What would be the difference in your life? That's the dream part. So when you're selling them the dream, you're selling them the want you to feel the sand between your toes. We're going to Hawaii, right? That's the thing. And then the quantification is, here are the steps it will take to get from point A to point B. And then if you do it right, the close is just self-evident. The customer closes themselves. They're like, when can we get started, right? And then that's it. So fear, dream, quantify, close. This is that dream phase. If this problem was no longer, if the solution presented itself, how would that make your life a better place? And then they'll tell you all the wonderful things it makes your life a better place. And you're saying to use this for sales. Then you just ask them, so what's stopping you? Sale made. There you go.
There's the rub. All right, so that is the 3 to 5 questions that we went through, and I think now we're on to hack of the week.
Hack of the week, and I would use the sword with the hack, but I didn't win the sword, so I guess I just have to settle for the sound effect. So damn it, Pat. Anyway, so the hack of the week. I mentioned Blair a couple times, and he uses this.
Blair who?
Blair Dunkley.
Blair Dunkley. All right, give him his proper credit.
Absolutely. I use a lot of his stuff on this just on this show. So he uses time within the question to shift the thinking of people. And it's going to sound silly, but someone gives you a problem right? And instead of, they're not in a solution phase, they're not thinking solutions, they're just ranting to you about the problem, right? And so he
Yeah.
goes through these specific structures in the question. And it's hilarious because I know exactly what he's doing. He does it to me, and I don't see it coming until it's too late. And then it hits me, kicks me in the teeth. I'm like, so he's been doing this again. All right. And the hilarious, it's the same thing over and over and over again. And he's like, well, because you haven't learned that lesson yet. I'm like, right. Because if you keep running the same problem, it's like you don't really know the solution yet. So the first question is, instead of just coming at it from a, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem, you start solution-oriented thinking, and you ask the question, what might you do? What might you do? So here's the problem, what might you do? And the reason why the what might you do, might part, doesn't make it as, what are you going to do? You don't get that drill sergeant scary, like, what are you going to? No, what might you do? So now it's hypothetical, and it feels a little less scary.
And it feels more less like a test and more like a creative activity. What might you do?
Now it's a brainstorming session. You're not under the third degree. We're not going to, destroy you and have a team of shooters kill you if you screw this up. No, what might you do? What are your options? And identifying the options. And then here's the crazy part. He adds a magic word. What might you do specifically? Because if they're farting around and they're going, well, we might do this, we might do that, we might do, if you get the specifics, what happens is they shift into steps. And they're like, well, if we did this, and then we did this, and we did this might get us from A to B. And that adding the word specifically makes that shift into from big, globulous chunks that don't really mean anything to very specific steps. And then he adds another magic word, and this one drives me absolutely.
Let me ask a dumb question here. So he's literally asking these. He doesn't ask.
He literally asks these questions verbatim.
Line 1, line 2, line 3. Like he goes through and asks each one of these.
Yep.
As a separate question.
And it drives me crazy because I know this pattern and I don't notice until he's using it. And then I notice halfway through, I'm like, do it again. The magic word for the next piece is now.
Yeah.
What might you do specifically now? And that stupid time phrase chunky mabobber thingy with the word now shifts you from problem-centric to solution-centric to step-centric to time-centric. What is the next step? And because you can see the next step, there's less trepidation for you to step into the darkness because you know what the next step is. And you go, well, that's not so bad. I can be an astronaut. It's only 3 things, right?
Yeah.
So there you go. Then the next ones are the ones that just drive me absolutely bonkers, because by the time I hit these ones, I already know what's happening to me. I know exactly what he's doing to me already. And it's what might you do differently, specifically now? And the differently causes you to move from woe is me to a more solution-centric thing. And the differently part is, well, you did all this stuff. A lot of this stuff failed. You're still coming back to me with the problem anyways. So what might you do differently? And I'm like, oh my gosh, it drives me crazy.
So hang on. So he's already got answers to 3 questions now.
Yeah, what might you do? What might you do specifically? What might you do specifically now? And then he asks you, what might you do differently?
So he wants you to change the plan you've come up with?
No, he wants you to look at the different angles of attack, the plans of attack, the structures by which you're thinking your way through, and just add in the magic word differently. It's almost the same thing as the same power as what might you do, instead of what are you going to do. And so he adds, what might you do differently? And because he adds the words might and differently, might takes away the stress of, oh God, this is going to all crumble in my face. These are just hypotheticals. It's a brainstorm session. But when you add the word differently, for whatever reason, it adds another angle of, another vector of attack, another just, hey, I never saw it from this angle because I didn't ask the word different. And so when you ask your client these questions, they start answering their own damn questions, and they start thinking, it's like that guy you said that's like, okay, well, I have a friend, he has this problem, and all you're doing is shifting positions, and the magic word different it forces you to ask the question, so what?
Right.
And then the last piece, and this is the one that infuriates me the most, because this is the one that kicks me in the pants and makes me go, why didn't I just think of this myself? And it was, what might you do differently, specifically? right now. And that's almost like a word of command where it's just like,
Yeah.
what's the next step?
It sort of makes you feel like you actually have to like hang up the phone with the guy and start doing something that very second, or leap up from the table and begin action.
But because it uses the same architecture structure, what might,
Yeah.
and then different. But specifically right now, light your ass on fire and you want to go do stuff.
Yeah.
And the hilarity is he just does these in this structure, in this order. Sometimes he skips one because he thinks, oh yeah, they got past that part, let's do this. And obviously, but if you're really, really stuck, he'll go through these 5 questions in this order. And this is the hack of the week because oh man, this has been the hack of my life. I met this dude when I was 23. I'm 43. I know this guy for 20 years. He taught me this 20 years ago, and I've used it almost every day since then. So there's the hack of a lifetime. I won't.
hack of the lifetime.
Hack of the lifetime.
Yeah, because it's like if you ask a guy what could you do or what might you do specifically right now, you feel like if you answer him, then you sort of immediately are like, well, why don't I just do it right now? Like why would I come up with a thing to do and then not do it immediately? It feels like it sort of puts that fire, like you said.
Specific right now, it's a specific step. It's the literal next step. And then the time function of right now, because you've chunked it down into a bite-sized piece, all of a sudden it doesn't seem so daunting. Right? There's 3 steps to becoming an astronaut, but the first step is got to pass grade 2.
Yeah.
Right?
Do that right now.
2. No problem.
Yeah.
How do you pass grade 2? Get this math test right. You can do this. And then I study for the math. Right?
Or maybe what you might do right now is stop asking me about becoming an astronaut and go upstairs and do your homework.
Yeah, but so do you think asking all these questions about astronauts is going to actually help you become an astronaut, or do you think you should do your homework so you can pass the grade, so you can pass the test, so you can go become an astronaut? Oh my God, I need to become an astronaut.
Yeah. God, that'd be great. Kid goes, I want to be an astronaut. Be like, great. What can you do right now to become to start on your route to becoming an astronaut? Right? What might you do right now that'll get you towards being an astronaut? Kid goes, walk to Florida to the space program. Okay, bye.
See you later, kid. Here's a sandwich. But yeah, like it's the coaching 101 is really simple, right? Like even if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't know which way you're heading, the first thing is little red arrow, you are here, right? So defining where you are, then defining where do you want to go, and then drawing the line between where you are and where you want to go. And nice. The stoic thinking model is the obstacle is the way. So Marcus Aurelius.
Ooh. Nice. All right. Well, I'll tell you where we are right now. It's at the end of our show.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for doing this. This has been fun. And this was surprisingly deep and interesting for a question we came up 5 minutes before the show.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I guess, the idea is that, a business owner can sort of try to run them through this themselves. I'm sure you would suggest that they be better off to have at least someone outside of themselves to speak to about it.
Well, if we talk about, the whole, what might you do differently, steps, right? So first things first is ask yourself the questions and see how you do, right? If you're still stuck because you can't get your head out of the space or whatever else, go find a sounding board, right? Find someone else who you know, like, and trust, right? And then bounce the idea off of them and then escalate it beyond there. Find an expert in the industry who you can then hand this off to. One of the questions was, okay, well, have you seen this before? Right. Well, the expert has. That's what makes him an expert, right? And then, at the point of time where you need somebody to keep you accountable, then you hire a business coach, then you hire a business consultant to drag you to that next level, right? So you don't necessarily have to go straight from 0 to 100. Ask yourself the question: if you remedy the situation, you're done. What do you need a coach for at that point? Right? You're good, right?
Yeah.
You might need a coach for other stuff, but for that particular problem, not so much no more, right? So there you go. Escalate the path as required.
You ever heard of rubber duck debugging?
Rubber duck? No. What's a rubber duck debug?
A rubber duck debug is some programmer came up with it. Probably some programmer, these programmers didn't want to talk to an actual person. He got himself a rubber duck. And
he asked the duck, what would you do?
Well, he explains the problem to the duck. He said, you have to understand, rubber duck, I can't get this to work because blah, 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 blah. And explaining it to the duck, he suddenly sees the issue.
Sometimes it's just a change of state. And when you verbalize the issue versus when you think your way through it, what happens is that as you verbalize it, you end up getting more inputs. So not only are you saying it, because saying it requires thinking it, right? You think it, then you say it. But if you say it while you're saying it, you got these muscle movements that are happening, right? So now you're being acutely aware that your mouth is moving. And because you can hear your own voice to a certain extent, right? You say it, you're hearing it, all of a sudden, just because it went through the auditory channel, you're like, hey, I get it. Right? That's all it took. Just a change of attack, change of angle.
Brilliant. Okay.
All right, let's play us out. I'm gonna hit the button here. Let's go.
Thank you very much, Earl. I will say thanks afterwards. Hit the button.
You bet.
Thanks for listening to Earl and the Idiot. We hope you learned something you can take action on this week. For more information or to contact the show, visit earlandtheidiot.com. And until next time, remember what Shakespeare said. The fool doth think he is wise, but the wise man knows himself to be a fool.
Thank you, Earl. Thanks, everyone, for listening. And thank you, Cat, I farted.
Oh, geez. Thank you, Cat, I farted. That's what we're going to have to call this episode now. Cat, I farted. All right.
Cat, I
Peace out
farted.
all.
Bye, everybody.